Hello, everyone, the viewers of Star Canada TV. We have a special guest with us today. He is the MLA of Edmonton, Ellerslie, winner of the second time in a row, and he is Mr. Rod Loyola, a great community friend. Welcome, Mr. Rod Loyola, to Star Canada TV.
Thank you very much, Indranil, and thank you to all your viewers who are watching us right now.
So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Okay, since you are, so great community friend, if you allow me, I will call you Rod rather than MLA Rod Loyola.
Please do. I prefer that.
Excellent, Rod. Okay. To start with, Rod, the viewers would like to know more about you.
Sure. So, my family actually came to Canada back in 1976. So, my mother and father, my older brother, and I were actually fleeing the violence that was happening back in Chile because it was a military dictatorship that had taken over. So, it was a military regime that had taken over on September 11th of 1973. And because of that, there was a lot of human rights issues that were happening in the country. And as a result, my dad ended up getting invited actually by a small Christian community to come to Canada. And so he came in March, and then my mother, my older brother, and I followed in July. And we actually came on July 1st. My dad planned it that way. He wanted us to arrive
Independence Day.
for Canada Day. Yeah. So growing up here in Canada, I always tell people that coming as a refugee is a little bit different than coming as an immigrant. And the immigrant wants to come, has prepared to come to a certain extent, is ready to take the steps necessary in order to integrate into society. The refugee hasn't. The refugee is fleeing violence, comes out of necessity, and therefore the reaction to the process of trying to acculturate is a little bit different. So many Chileans that came from that experience were actually wanting to go back. And nobody expected the military regime to last for 17 years. Everybody thought maybe it would be 2-3 years and then we would go back. But then unfortunately that wasn't the case. But then eventually my parents decided, no, we're going to stay here in Canada. And I'm happy to say that we have 2 more brothers that were born here in Canada. All 4 of us have gone to the University of Alberta. And now we're all contributing members of our society.
Wow, excellent. So as a newcomer, what are the challenges you face to integrate to the society, or even economic challenges, if there are any?
Yeah, I always remember the story of the first year, the first winter that we were here in Canada. My dad wasn't the kind of person that liked getting handouts. He said, I never want to depend on the system. I can work, And as a result, he ended up going to the bank to ask for a loan so that he could buy us parkas for the wintertime. And that's one of the realities that we went through. So for my mother and my father, bless their souls, they worked so incredibly hard. So they had their day jobs, and then on top of that, for 17 years, they did janitorial service in the evenings. So my parents would come home from work, 5 o'clock, cook dinner really quickly, eat, and then they were back out the door until like 11 o'clock at night. And it was like that for 17 years. And a lot of immigrants go through that experience, having to work 2-3 jobs in order just to make ends meet. But my brothers and I were very lucky to have very loving parents, people that were incredibly dedicated to our upbringing and making sure that we would never go without. So my heart goes out to all the immigrant families out there that are doing the same, because I know that they're working hard. And that's why I want to make sure that everybody feels represented within this government, or at least by our caucus, by the Alberta NDP, because I'm a person that believes that everybody, every single person has value. Every person. And it's important that they be respected and treated with dignity. And that's one of the reasons is mainly because of my upbringing, the fact that I come from that immigrant experience. So that's why I relate so much with other immigrants, no matter which background they are. It doesn't matter to me where you're from in the world. If you're a new Canadian,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you feel welcomed, and because I know how hard immigrants work in order to contribute to our society.
Since you started by saying that the military regime, so give us a very short rundown of what is happening today in Chile. We see in television lots of trouble going on with some raising of some transportation ticket price that kicked it off.
Yeah, indeed. So what ended up happening is on October, I believe it was October 8th, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be mistaken on the date. But what happened is that the government decided to raise the transit rates for what they call their LRT, the metro. And the students decided that they were going to protest the hike in transportation fee. And as a result, the next day, the protest was met with repression by the government. And that incited anger from the entire country. The following day, more people went to protest in the streets. And then the government responded with even more repression. It was quite unfortunate because, I think that in a free and democratic society, people should be able to vote. People should be able to voice their opinion. And in this particular case, the students were met with repression rather than actually listening to the students. In a democratic society, people should feel free to protest. There shouldn't be that fear of repression and violence by the state against its own citizens. So unfortunately, the situation got worse and worse in Chile, and now they're calling for everyone to go on strike, to not go to work. Things are getting worse rather than getting better. But unfortunately, that's because of austerity measures. Whenever a government takes money out of the services that should be provided to the people, you're going to have that kind of reaction from the people. And it's the same experience that we have here.
Yeah, we'll come to it in a way, and we'll relate to that. We want to know a little bit more about you, your passions and interests in life. I know a few other people know in our community about your passion for music, art, and culture. Give us a bit of a rundown about it again. We are still in the segment where we are knowing Rod, our friend, even better.
Yeah. So when I was about 11 years old, my dad gave me my first guitar. He bought me a guitar. I used to love singing, and I remember being in school in grade 1 and 2 and being part of the school choir. And I just loved to sing, And then when my dad bought me my first guitar, I would actually spend a lot of time just learning how to play guitar. And I just fell in love with music. And then when I was roughly around 14 years old, I started getting introduced to a lot of what's called La Nueva Canción Chilena, which was kind of like protest music from Latin America. And it was really a music that shared the everyday life of the very common person, And so then what I ended up doing was learning so much about life through the songs of these musicians and learning how to respect the dignity of people because of it's a music that's very close to the soul and close to the heart, and that talks about everyday things that happen to people, and like that I just became a very passionate musician. And I love playing music. I love playing guitar. Yeah, maybe one day I'll share it with you.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity personally, but we wanted to know more from the viewer's point of view. Tell us a little bit more about your family, your wife, your children. What do they do? What are their passions? What are their interests?
Well, I have 2 boys. They're 15 and 10. And they're both really into music. They just love playing music. So like that, they're like their father. And basically, I try to encourage them as much as possible. Because of course, there's many benefits to music, not just the music itself and learning, but it's also the opportunity to demonstrate how to be a creative individual. And so it doesn't matter whether you're creating music or you're drawing or or in other ways, but it's all contributing to society. Because I always tell my kids, you can either listen to music or you can make music.
Wow.
You can watch TV or you can make TV, because now you can do your own TV show. You can do your own Facebook Live, your YouTube.
Yeah.
So, for example, my youngest son has his own YouTube channel.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Wow.
So, I always tell them that to spend their time creating.
Okay.
Because it's out of creating that we learn our own self-worth and that we are actually contributors to society.
Any of them interested in politics or later on?
You know,
too young to decide at this
I
point.
think, maybe too young. But my youngest one, who's around 10, he's in grade 6, and he went to the legislature this year.
Yeah.
And he was very interested in the whole process. So a lot of the times, both my boys are very supportive. So even when it's campaign time, they always come out and volunteer, and it's wonderful to have their support. That's for sure.
Very good. Okay. So thank you for this part of the personal conversation about your own family, yourself, and your struggles. Now we will move straight to the segment where the viewers are waiting for. So let's start with the budget.
I do believe that Albertans were promised a better budget than they actually got. This is the reality. And
I see. Interesting.
There's been a number of hikes in taxes that people are going to be getting through this budget, but the worst aspect of it all is the fact that this current government, this UCP government, has decided to put $4.7 billion to large corporations, hoping that those corporations will create jobs here in the province of Alberta. Now, so far, we've had a number of companies, Husky being one of them, who's actually taken the money and has actually invested it in other jurisdictions across Canada and in the United States. So they're taking Alberta taxpayer dollars into their coffers for their stakeholders, and instead of putting that money back into the province, investing it back into Albertans, they're actually taking the money and they're fleeing our economy. So this is very concerning, because at the same time that they've given this $4.7 billion no jobs handout to these large corporations, at the same time they're cutting programs. And the biggest ones that they're cutting, of course, are education. There's education, healthcare. They've decided to de-index AISH. I can get into a little bit more detail on that if you like. But there's a number of cuts that Albertans are going to be experiencing now as a result of this budget. And I know, like, the conservative perspective is give corporations money and they'll invest it. But we're not seeing that. That's not the reality of that's going. So on top of that, we're seeing them give this money away to large corporations, and then we're seeing austerity type cuts at the same time, taking money out of the things that Albertans require most in terms of public education, all forms of education, healthcare, and all other kind of government programming.
Okay. So we would like to know a little bit more about de-indexing, you were saying. Interesting.
Sure. So one of the things that our government did was that we decided that we were going to index AISH. So AISH is the program that people who are severely handicapped get money from the government. What they get is minor. It's not that much money. If you were to relate it to a job, it would essentially be less than $10 an hour. Okay? So this is the thing, is that these people are expected to live on almost next to nothing, because after paying your rent and paying your gas bill and your water bill and your electricity, they don't have that much left, right? So then with that, they have to pay groceries, they have to eat, and people were saying that they just couldn't afford to live on what the AISH payment was. So one of the things that the Alberta NDP government did when we were in power was we decided that we were going to index AISH to make sure that it kept up with
inflation.
With inflation.
Okay.
So that was well received. And unfortunately, this UCP government has decided that they're going to take that back. And like that, there's a number of things. For example, there's also what's known as the Henson Trusts. So this is where AISH recipients, if they had parents that had money, they could transfer that money to their children, and they wouldn't suffer any kind of cutback from the AISH program.
Oh, I see.
Right? But now they've decided that they're going to take the Henson Trust away. So then people are just in a really dire situation. And like that, they've raised a number of taxes on people. I think that one of the worst things, though, is the fact that rural Alberta decided to vote for this government. One of the largest impacts is the fact that this government is taking more money away from municipalities. So those same rural communities that voted for this government are now going to have to pay more through property tax to their own municipalities because the government, the Alberta government, isn't giving them as a municipality enough money to run the services that they need to run. And like that, that's, for example, my critic role is within transportation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Yes, what is your role in the legislature now?
So one of the examples under the Ministry of Transportation was the Green Trip Fund. So that fund was
which was being funded through the carbon tax, I believe.
Exactly. So because we had the carbon levy, those monies were, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that they think that the carbon tax, what they refer to as the carbon tax, was going to general revenue, and it wasn't. The carbon tax was actually going to pay for specific things, like taking the small business tax from 3% to 2%, which is a decrease of over 30%. It's going to help diversify the economy. It was going to help diversify the economy.
In which way? Because that's a very broad term, diversifying the economy.
We can get into more detail in just a moment.
Yeah, sure.
It was also going to specific programs like the Green Trip, which was going to pay for the LRT and also the Green Line in Calgary. So it was going towards specific public transportation programs. So those monies that were being collected by what was euphemistically called the carbon tax was actually going to help us move our economy towards a more modern economy that was less dependent on petroleum. Not that we were going to cut depending on petroleum. Like, I mean, Alberta is a petroleum producing jurisdiction, and it's always going to be there. But we can't continue to rely on petroleum to the same degree that we always have, because it's one product in one market being sold at one price.
True. I have a quick question here. You carry on after that. So you said it is always going to be there, but if you look at the reaction from the Green Party and what her leader has said, that she wants to phase out petroleum in 10 years' time. So what is your comment?
Well, I mean, the Green Party has their own perspective, right? I think that it's very important in an economy that's highly dependent on petroleum that we can't make claims like that. We have to really think well about how we're going to transition from being so incredibly dependent on petroleum to being less dependent, and then slowly moving towards diversifying our economy so that we're creating good mortgage-paying jobs in other types of industries before we cut our dependency on petroleum. Because this is one of the things that perhaps the leader of the Green Party isn't considering. You phase out petroleum. Where are the people who work there? Where are they going to work now? You have to think about how your environmental policy is affecting the average person, the common person. Because, I mean, if you don't think about those things, those same immigrants that I was talking about before are the same people who are working in the petroleum industry. And then as a result of that, you have a number of other people who work in the service industry who are relying on the people who work in the petroleum industry, because those are the people who actually spend their money in the service industry. So if you want to bring the economy to a grinding halt, phase out petroleum.
And at that abruptly, to say the least.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's why we can't do that. It's impossible to move in that direction. It has to be a well thought out transition.
So, taking a leaf from what you were saying about the carbon levy and the advantages of it, why was it not then, communicated in a way that common people would understand, would take interest in it? There are a number of great, I don't want to repeat again, you already mentioned there were some fantastic developmental work being done, which is not being done now. But the constituents or the voter at large, common people were not educated on these advantages. Where was that communication gap, and why was that communication gap?
Yeah, I think that hindsight is always 2020, as they say. When you look back, you see things more clearly. I think that at the time we were so worried about governing that we weren't as specifically focused on communicating, or at least communicating in a way that was reaching the majority of Albertans. And I think we could have done a better job. We most definitely we should have done a better job. But I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think that when the Alberta NDP was elected to their term, the last government, we weren't expecting it, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows that we were expecting to be the official opposition at the time. So in our first year, second year of governance, it was like we were building the plane as we were flying it. And that's why I say we were so focused on governing and making sure that we were doing all these great programs and listening to the people. And of course, you can't fix 44 years of austerity budgets through progressive conservatives in just 4 years. You can't fix it all. So then what ended up happening is that we created all these great programs that were forward-looking and moving us towards a more modern economy, but we just didn't have enough time to complete it. I honestly would like to share with all your viewers that if they would have just given us 4 more years, they would have seen this economy turn around. We would have been less dependent on petroleum. We would have diversified the economy in a way that was really meaningful. And we would have been helping a number of small and medium-sized businesses in our economy to be successful. There were some successes. There were some investments made here in the province of Alberta under our term, but it would have been a lot more if we would have been allowed to carry on for just 4 more years.
That's it. If not, then again, in future, you have another opportunity for sure.
And that's our hope, right? So to all your viewers at home, I hope that you're supportive of me and the Alberta NDP, and that you hopefully you'll put us in a position where we can be government once again.
Excellent. My next question is based on what you were now saying that about the dependence of petroleum and all. So your stand on the pipeline.
I think that pipelines are very important because we need to get our product to market. And as I was saying before, is that we rely on one product in one market at one price. As soon as we get the pipeline built, or as soon as Albertans get their pipeline, they will get access to other markets, which means that they can sell the petroleum or the byproducts of the petroleum at a greater price to other buyers, China, India, South Korea, places in Africa. By getting our product to market, we're going to be able to get a better price for it, and then we'll be less reliant on the United States. I always like to remind people. In 2017, I remember the 2017 numbers. Alberta did $198 billion in trade. And of that, 182 was to the United States. So not only are we dependent on petroleum, but we're also dependent on the United States. So we need to not only diversify what we're selling, we need to diversify who we're selling it to. And that way, Alberta will become a more competitive place to do business, not only for the people that come and invest here, but also for the people who are building their business here and selling it to the outside world.
And even United States has become more or less self-dependent on petroleum. So where is the market now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, when they discovered shale oil and shale gas, they didn't need our oil sands anymore to refine.
True. So tell me, Rod, usually we see everywhere in the world that, there is a, political divide, or there is a competition between left versus right, let's say conservative versus liberal, conservative versus New Democrat everywhere. Why do we see here NDP versus NDP, New Democrats of Vancouver or BC versus New Democrats here at Alberta? Why is this divide, and how can you, as a leader, bring people together, bring in the same place, same boat?
Well, I think that it's very important when considering specific policy that at the end of the day, that policy is supposed to serve the people rather than strictly be ideological. And that's what you get with the Alberta NDP. You're getting a value and principle-based party, but that's making sure that it serves the people first rather than serving its own ideology. So that's why you see a huge difference between the federal NDP and
I wanted to ask you, the next question was, federal NDP also has a very different view than the Alberta NDP, especially on pipelines.
Yeah, and the Alberta NDP recognizes and realizes that the people of Alberta are highly dependent on petroleum. We want a transition, but we don't want to risk the lives and the families specifically in that process. I mean, this is the thing, is that being a politician, you are driven by ideology. It's without a mistake. That's the truth of it. But the reality is that ideology has to serve people. And if you become so focused on your ideas rather than on who you're trying to help, then you've missed the boat. And this is the reality, is that here in Alberta, we have a very progressive view towards moving towards a modern economy. The Alberta NDP knows where we want to go, and we're doing it for the people of Alberta.
I do appreciate that point, but the question was to you, how can you work together? How can you move towards working together?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that it's very important to have dialogue with our counterparts. I think that Rachel Notley did it when she was premier, did a fantastic job of creating spaces for dialogue between the provincial parties, the NDP provincially in other jurisdictions as well as federally, better than anybody had ever seen before. She was bringing people to the table to sit down and talk about how we can move forward together. When one of the first things that our government did back in 2015 is we sat down the big petroleum industry corporations, Indigenous people, the environmentalists, everybody. We sat them all down at the table and said, look, historically, you guys all have been fighting with each other. Reality is, though, is that Albertans want a solution. Let's find that solution together. So by sitting everybody down, we were able to come up with a plan, and that plan included the climate action plan that the Alberta NDP came up with, and the pricing on carbon. Now, I want to remind people that the pricing on carbon is still going to be instituted by the federal government. But now, instead of that money going to the Alberta government under our plan, it's now going to the federal government.
Because it's mandatory,
Exactly.
Implemented by the federal government.
So rather than Alberta being able to pay for programs like diversifying our economy, now all that money is going to the federal government. Now they can decide what they want to do with it. So Albertans, I believe, need to ask themselves, you're going to have to pay a carbon tax whether you like it or not. The question is, do you want that money to go to the federal government, or do you want it to stay right here in Alberta and be invested in Albertans, helping Albertans?
So, a few minutes ago, you said, this was our platform, please support us next time. To that, I would like to ask you a question. Why is there a significant lack of support in the rural belt, as you just mentioned, and also in the Calgary region? So we have three specific hubs to say. You have a better terminology. This is, I would say, there's a rural, there's a Calgary hub, there's an Edmonton hub.
Yeah.
So in Edmonton hub, you and your party have been doing exceptionally well. Why it is not been able to? You're not able to translate it to at least another major city, which is Calgary. And there has been probably very little inroads into the rural belt. So what are your plans moving forward, and how are you going to create an impact, especially in the rural belt?
Well, starting with Calgary, I think that we're putting a lot of efforts. I mean, we have 3 MLAs in Calgary right now.
All 3 were ex-ministers, I believe. Yeah, they were, yeah?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So we are giving a lot of attention towards Calgary and connecting with people. We've been talking to many, many people. And actually, people have been coming to us saying, I think that a lot of people were expecting a different government with the UCP. They were expecting something new, less taxes, because this is the narrative that you hear often. People are actually coming to us and saying, we didn't vote for this. And that's something really important. Specifically with the passing of Bill 22. Bill 22 is a bill which now is a law. Unfortunately, we did our best to fight against it, but which actually fired the Elections Commissioner.
That's true.
The United Conservative Party has had so many investigations into their leadership race. The Elections Commissioner fined them more than $211,000 because they weren't playing by the rules. So Albertans are seeing this now, that the same conservative entitlement of spending, like they expect everybody else to be on a shoestring budget, but they continue to take their jets.
No, you can elaborate a little bit more. So about
it's just I don't like getting into the
it was a shock. We suddenly saw that there is a private jet being hired and
private jet by Mr. Jason Kenney.
From where to where, and what was the reason?
They were going to a pancake breakfast. We also have people who work directly for the Premier's office that are going to England. They're staying in elaborate hotels, $16,000 trips. Even like I don't even know what it is, but a calcium C bath being offered. Like I don't even know what that is. And I bet you most Albertans don't know what it is. But the reality is that this government, when it comes to their own spending, they're willing to spend whatever they want. But they expect Albertans to tighten their belts.
And not ready to learn from their previous past mistakes as well, because similar thing happened in a private jet few years ago as well.
Exactly. And this is what we're hearing from Calgarians. We're hearing from other people in rural areas that this is not what they voted for. They voted for a government that was going to be fiscally responsible. The cuts are impacting average Albertans, but they're not living up to those cuts.
No, but what I feel, and many of our constituents and viewers feel, that as you said, they're coming to you. You're very right, because probably you're not able to reach the rural belt, the remote belt. It used to be Wild Rose Belt, in fact. Most of them. And after the merger, the UCP gets the advantage of it. But has there been any significant effort to reach out to them, rather than, as you said, they're reaching out to you?
Yeah, most definitely. So we have, like most political parties, we're highly dependent on volunteers. Right? I mean, we are the elected representatives, and when it comes to election time, we're the candidate. But at that time, we're all volunteers. We're all volunteering our time to help build a better Alberta. So we're highly dependent on volunteers. So I would make a call to the people that are viewing the program right now. If you're interested in working with me or working with others in the community to help build a better Alberta, one that's not of UCP entitlements and cronyism and special favors for your friends, and you want something that's more just, then come and work with me. Let's volunteer with me so that we can continue to build a better Alberta, no matter where you live. If you live in the rural area or Calgary or here in Edmonton, let's all work together to build a better Alberta.
Once again, Rod, welcome to Star Canada TV. So this will be a buzzer round. Only the first point will be elaborated by me. After that, only one word from me.
Sure.
And you have about 30 to 40 seconds for each answer.
Okay.
So yesterday I was working at a casino volunteer event, and there was a discussion that there were cuts to the budget. People do not know even that whether the CIPC will still exists or to what extent it exists. The casino advisor told us that now it will be once in maybe 2 years, not even in 18 months. Usually we get casino, once in a year. So tell us more about that ministry where it deals with status of women, art and culture. And from now onwards, it will be only one word after that. Okay, all yours.
Okay. So the Ministry of Culture and the Status of Women, they're actually taking. So one of the things I have to go back on is that the agencies, boards, and commissions of the government are very important. This government has decided to take power away from those agencies, boards, and commissions, and specifically money that's raised by those through the channels of the agency, boards, and commissions, and bring them all under government control. So it's a centralization of it. So essentially what's happening is that they're taking money from those programs and they're putting that towards general revenue to pay for this $4.7 billion no jobs corporate handout.
So next one is on the research and development.
Alberta Innovates is an incredible agency of the government of Alberta. Unfortunately, more than 100 jobs are going to be cut from Alberta Innovates. I think that Alberta Innovates is a really important because they're the ones that are helping us diversify this economy, moving us towards a more modern way of not only working within the petroleum industry, but also petroleum byproducts as well. So Alberta Innovates, I would say we really need to support.
Okay. Impact of budget on advanced education?
Less money for universities ultimately means more money coming out of the pockets of students. They're going to have to pay higher tuitions. And not only that, their education tax credit was also cut in this last budget, which means that another $800 is going to be coming out of the pockets of students, not just what they're paying in tuition.
And schools and education in general?
Schools, boards, all across the province are having to make very hard choices because, of course, they've been paid less money. It's all in varying degrees. But as a result, if they get paid less money, it means less teachers in the classroom, which means bigger classrooms, more students in every classroom. And this is what we can expect to see going forward, unfortunately.
So,
not enough teachers, not enough teachers' assistants as well, which is really important for those families that have children that have special needs. They really depend on those teachers' assistants, and unfortunately, they were the first ones to be cut in this budget.
Healthcare and especially the nurses?
Nurses, many nurses are going to be laid off, unfortunately. Albertans can expect longer wait times. And like that, there's going to be...
It goes on and on.
It goes on and on and on. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so I would request you now for your 2 comments about Ellerslie, your constituency. People would also like to know about the LRT, what is the future of it, and the hospitals which are now getting delayed. But 2 comments with respect to your own constituency, and 2 comments how you would like to be remembered as a Rod Loyola after maybe 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Edmonton Ellerslie is young families with young children, and also seniors. because part of my writing covers the Mill Woods portion, people who have called Edmonton and Mill Woods home for a very long time, and also south of the Anthony Henday, which is Ellerslie, which are new families, have a high immigrant population, new Canadian population. When you look at the statistics, over 38% of the people who live in Edmonton and Ellerslie are from an ethnic background. Highly diverse. I love it. I feel like my writing is the United Nations.
Wow.
And I feel that we are a writing that can really demonstrate, not only to the rest of Alberta, but to the rest of Canada, how we can make a difference. We have a lot of great people doing a lot of good work, many small businesses opening up in Ellerslie. I love to visit new small businesses, so if you have a business that's opening up, please give me a call. I'd love to visit. How I would like to be remembered. I've always been a person that has strived to be a person of integrity. With Rod Loyola, you get what I say I'm going to do. I mean, like any human being, I have my faults. But at the end of the day, if I tell you I'm going to get something done, I get it done. I try to work hard. And most importantly, I treat everybody with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter who. Even people who perhaps may have a problem with me, I'll still treat them with dignity and respect. And I've learned to be a person that forgives rather than holds a grudge. And like that, I always strive to seek understanding and to understand others before they try to understand me. I think that as we go through life, we realize that there's a lot more that can be done when we work together and we work towards unity rather than standing firm on our own ideas. So I would like to be remembered as a person that had a broad perspective, that was willing to listen to people, that dedicated himself to building a better society. And specifically for Edmonton Ellerslie, I am not going to stop fighting for a new high school in Edmonton Ellerslie. So hopefully we get that high school built soon, and people remember all the hard work that was put into getting that high school built. And I'm counting on people who are watching. If you live in Edmonton Ellerslie, please contact my office if you want to see a new high school built in South Edmonton.
Excellent. And I must add there that even if you're not in Edmonton Ellerslie, you still can access Rod.
Yes.
That has always been the case.
Yes.
Hello, once again to Star Canada TV, and it's a very important program which gets aired in Canada, in India, especially in Punjab, and lots of parts even in the Ontario region where there's a high population, they also listen to it. I would say thousands of it. So we are going to take account soon. So we are very fortunate to have you here with us. And this point of time, we have a very challenging issue or a question which we will discuss with you on the comments about Kashmir. So I haven't been to that program, so I cannot give my first-hand experience. But there has been quite a bit of an uproar, to say the least. And there was a segment of which segment I can tell you that Indo-Canadian segment, I felt very sentimental about the comments, keeping in mind what was pointed to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was said that you're the only elected official, or I wouldn't say politician, only elected member who have spoken or you have commented on this issue, especially on the human rights issue, I believe, in Kashmir. So tell us more. It's not really a question answer. It's more of a conversation. And when this is aired to hundreds of people, they would know your comments, and if required, they can reach out to you again.
Number one, I haven't been the only elected official to comment on the issue of Kashmir. I will leave the research to those who can do it, because
No, I meant Alberta, in Alberta.
in Alberta,
Yeah.
I am not the only one.
Okay.
I will let other people do the research
Okay.
and find out who the others are.
Yeah.
I think that it's very important that my comments not be taken out of context. And I feel like that they have been taken out of context. Because people have said to me that I was making anti-India statements, which is not true. Completely, 100% not true. The comments that I made at a rally, I specifically even stated this is not about one country versus another country. As I was relating to you earlier, I'm a person who treats everybody with dignity and respect. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights specifically states that it's a human right for, number one, people to have freedom of expression, but also access to healthcare, access to water, to be able to provide for oneself is a human right. And the reality is, now I completely understand that what's happening in Kashmir is a result of a history that goes back all the way to partition.
Absolutely. Even prior to that.
Even prior to that. The injustices of today will never justify the injustices of the past. That is something that we need to be clear on. It is in that light, in the light where people aren't getting access to human rights, and I'm not talking about, because people have come to me and said, oh, so do you support the terrorists? Of course not. How could I? That's not what this is about.
Of course, that is stupid to ask. But over here, let me ask that you are not loyal. People know who you are. You cannot support terrorists. But would you be speaking also, against terrorism, the breeding ground of terrorism, which has resulted into so much of problem in Kashmir? Because if you are, with everyone, then if there is a rally tomorrow in favor of, in Kashmir and against the terror which is happening from against the border of Kashmir, will you be in that rally too and speak out?
Well,
because there's a rally being planned. No, there's a rally being planned that, as a result or as a reply to that.
Yeah, no, I think that, I'll be honest with you. I think that when I was invited to go to the rally and speak about human rights in Kashmir, I wasn't as informed on what the rally was really about. I thought I was going to a human rights rally. That's what I thought.
I believe so, yeah.
Because there were other representatives from human rights organizations that were also at that rally. Now, people have told me that the rally was an anti-India rally. My apologies go out to all those people, because that was never my intention. Even in my statements that day at that rally, I said, this is not about one country versus another country. This is about people's access to human rights. I think that my big lesson from this whole thing is making sure to talk to as many people as possible about what's happening at a particular rally. I think that we can all learn. And I'm humble enough to understand that I too can learn from things that have gone on in the past. But one thing is absolutely certain, and that is that I will always stand up for human rights. Being a refugee, coming from a country that suffered a military dictatorship, I will always stand up for the human rights of all people. Not just some people, not just Muslims, not just Christians, not just Sikhs. I stand up for everybody's human right. People in the community who know me and know my work know that I work for everybody. Anybody can come to my door and speak to me and say, Rod, I have this issue, I have this problem, I have this concern. and I will do my very best to help that person, no matter what it is, even if I don't agree with it. Because I'll remind you, like people in the Sikh community know me because of the helmet exemption. And I'll be honest with you, when the Sikh Motorcycle Club first came to me to discuss this issue, I thought, no, I can't, I don't agree with this. But see, this is where perspective lies. When someone's coming to you with an idea, you can have a closed mind and say no, or you can have an open mind and say, why is this person asking me this? I need to educate myself about this. So this is the thing. I think that when it comes to the issue of Kashmir, and when it comes to people, I'm not talking about terrorists, I'm not talking about governments, I'm not talking about self-interested politicians, I'm talking about the people on the ground. I'm talking about children. Children that can't go to school or have access to water or have access to healthcare. Those are the people that I'm talking about when I bring up issues of human rights.
But this was the whole issue. I mean, abrogation of Article 370 was to completely integrate that region to India so that the children and the women and the people who are underprivileged, they get more access to government funds. Because as you know, that the Kashmir was cordoned off in a way that no one can even invest there. And India is going through big opening up of the economy. But Kashmir was not touched in terms of development. This was the whole issue about it. And in order to implement such a measure, there were for some time, there were certain restrictions for sure. So you were probably not informed going into the rally, but giving you a background, even United Nations have not commented, keeping it with it's a bilateral issue. India and Pakistan, they have a bilateral issue. So what people have really felt bad, and you said there were others, so if you do not want to name, that's fine. But what the perception was, you were the only elected official who was standing on other side of the camp and not here. Would you be standing here as well to show? Because there's a rally planned, as I said.
As I stated, I will always stand with all people on issues. If they come to me and they request my help, I will always help them.
Okay, Rod, as you know, there has been, bombardment of terrorist attacks, one after the other. The recent one which comes to our mind was the Pulwama attack, whereby a lot of soldiers were also killed, So, in a way, to stop those terrorist attacks, it was very important that Article 370 will be abrogated. This was the main reason behind it. Also, the development issue, which I said, But look at the examples in history, not so long time ago. Even Osama bin Laden, he was found in Pakistan. There was some kind of state-sponsored terrorism which has happened for years and years and years. We are hopeful that with Oxford-educated Imran Khan coming into power, it will improve. Yes, he has started showing some signs. The Gurudaspur corridor has just been built, which is the link between India and Pakistan. The other day, Indian Prime Minister went on record in appreciating and thanking the counterpart, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, that a lot of work, more of the work in fact was done from the Pakistan end. So we hope that relations will improve, our organization few years ago has done first ever India-Pakistan joint Independence Day. So we want everyone to live together and be in harmony together. So what the one part of the segment or Indo-Canadian citizens here living in Alberta, in Edmonton, are very sad or angry also to an extent, is that you're spoken from on the point of view of one segment. You haven't really, got into the details of it. And if required, will you be speaking in terms of anti-terrorism, efforts in Kashmir?
Most definitely. If people come to me, I will answer them. If people come and sit down with me, recently I've sat down with a group that was interested from Bangladeshi community. There was a young man who was tortured for 7 hours, and as a result of the torture was killed. They came to me with this human rights issue. I said that I would be happy to support them. Like that, if people from the community come and talk to me, I will most definitely support them. That's what my job is.
So you're talking specific, very specific. We know what Loyola is. You have got a track record of 4 years. So many of us, 5 now. Yeah, very good. So what you do and what you will, it is fine. We are talking about, at this point of time, we are pinpointing on only on one issue, which possibly could have been an aberration. That you, as you right now said, that you were probably not briefed enough going into that rally. But people have been hurt, rightly or wrongly, they have been hurt in their sentiments. I know you mentioned that you have even spoken against human rights in Chile. So why not? You're speaking throughout globe.
Yeah.
But Kashmir is such a sentimental issue, and people in that part, in Kashmir and in Indians in general have suffered so much because of the infiltration of the terrorism. So would you be also speaking in terms of your mandate or your support to stop the terror?
My mandate will always be to stand up for humans, no matter which country they're from. I'm a person who believes in human rights. I believe that if it's commonly said, all that evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing. And I will never be a person that is just going to sit around and watch evil things happen. Now, this can go for both sides. I'm not saying that one side is evil and one side is not.
True.
What I'm saying is that it doesn't matter what government it is. What ends up happening is that in a lot of cases, there are political players vying for power, and average people like ourselves are the ones that suffer. We are the ones that have our human rights denied at the end of the day, because these powerful people are attempting to vie for power, one for each side.
But Rod, how much of the correct information you have had on the human rights violation? Because of late, European Parliament, European Commission, their member of parliaments were right into Srinagar, and because they were invited to see that it is pretty normal. So the source of information you have based on those comments or based on the rally even, to what extent?
It wasn't just on the rally.
Yeah.
I mean, the John Humphrey Center for Peace and Human Rights is also a very credible source. The United Nations has commented specifically on what is happening on what the names are, that India-controlled Kashmir or Pakistani-controlled Kashmir, and then there's Kashmiris who just don't want to be controlled by anybody, right? So there's all these players that are vying for power. And what I'm saying is that honest, humble, salt of the earth people are the ones that suffer. And those human rights of those people are the ones that I was speaking about. Those people who are being caught in the middle of this conflict. It's not their fault. It's not a child's fault to be born into a conflict zone. Who's going to stand up for that child? So when I'm there, I'm speaking for the human rights of people who don't have a voice for themselves. I'm not there standing up for the state of India or the state of Pakistan or this player or that player. I'm not there for that. I'm there to give a voice to the people who don't have a voice. Now, I'm sorry that the community has mistaken my statement, but that day, I was very specific. This is not about one country versus another. This is about people on the ground who are suffering and that they need to have their human rights respected, because that's what I am about at the end of the day. Now, I've done an open invitation to many members of the community to please come and talk to me. And I was even promised, people who have sat down with me said, yeah, Rod, we know who you are. We know what you stand for. We respect you. We thought you were misinformed.
No, I think very well said. I mean, as soon as you said that you're sorry that even unknowingly also you heard part of sentiments of part of the general public over here, then I think that should end over there. The question which I'll bring it once again for a specific answer to you, that should there be a rally which is in support of anti-terrorism activities which is happening in Kashmir, because of which that particular child is also suffering, whom we were mentioning. Will you be there standing with them? and making a comment.
Well, as a result of everything that happened,
Yeah.
I have agreed that I will not attend any more rallies. Because it just leads to problems,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Well,
So
okay.
I went to that rally
Yeah.
mistakenly believing that it was
Well,
something that I thought it wasn't. I mean, there were a lot of people at that rally who were honestly there to talk about human rights. There were others that were there with
for
other
political gains, some kind of,
for another
Yeah.
political reason.
Yes. Yeah.
And I won't deny that,
Okay. Good.
right?
Well said.
I think that my job as a politician is to speak out on these things, and I will continue to do so in the House from now on. I continue to make statements in the House. So if the community comes to me, I will most definitely speak about it in the House.
Very good. Very well said. We really,
Yeah.
really appreciate, and your stand for, putting a stop to terror in Kashmir. Any comments on that?
I think that when it comes to these political problems, we have to ask ourselves, what is the root? What is the root? And many times it's the root is in a history of violence and oppression. And what we really need is reconciliation. The way that we learned from Indigenous people here in Canada and throughout other parts of the world, when those who have been wronged sit down with those who have wronged them and work out their differences, we will have true reconciliation and we can move forward. Until then, we won't be able to. So my recommendation, and what I will continue to fight for, as best as I can, is to help out with that reconciliation process, as is to the extent of my responsibility as an elected official here. My interest is making sure that people here in Alberta see each other as people first, rather than seeing each other as, I'm Pakistani, I'm Indian, I'm Chilean, I'm Canadian, I'm this. We're all people.
All human beings.
We're all human beings, and we deserve to be respected. And the only way that we can get there is by keeping an open mind and talking with one another, rather than shutting people out.
Well said. Just as a concluding note, over here, our friend Rod Loyola, who has always been a friend, he said he's not going to attend any more rallies. But on a serious note, any constituent or any group of people, if you want Rod to raise a question during the question hour, even which is in terms of Kashmir, human rights in Kashmir, and what are the effects now of this present scenario, how we are moving forward in India, feel free to go to Rod. He will certainly put it in his agenda and ask that question in favor of humanity. And like all of us, Rod wants complete peace in Kashmir and all over the world. So hopefully, here it absolves. And once again, the doors are open for Rod for any further questions. Thank you, viewers, for Start Canada TV. This is Indranil Chaudhary signing off.